So today we're going to talk a little bit about the lease renewal process. Now this is for the audit process that a department manager, team leader, maybe a senior manager would go through on a monthly basis to check the performance, the portfolio activity, the KPIs of a property manager. So today what I'm looking to do is to have a look at 4.6, and this is the monthly audit for a new lease renewal or a rental agreement renewal. Now, what we would do is this particular card would be copied across, and hypothetically, if there was 10 lease renewals in a month, you might want to randomly audit 5 of those. So what you would do is you would come into the card, open the card up, and copy that across, and inside of here you'd put the month. So for example, that might be, I'm just looking here, August 2021, so it might be August 2021. The audit number, if you're auditing 5, so it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you may have another portfolio, so you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, another portfolio 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So what you're doing is you're randomly auditing the portfolio for different activities throughout the course of the month. Inside of here, you put the property manager's name, so it might be Michael Furlong, and then you've got the property address, and that's the process. Now, the objective here is that if we're going to be using the electronic version, then we would run through and we would copy this off. If we're going to use the printed version, which we've got a copy inside of here, now the printed version is 5 pages, and it's exactly the same process here. So what we'll be doing is we're ticking off any of the tasks that are either complete or not applicable. There'll be a lot of sections inside of here that'll be not applicable. So for example, we might have made a note in here around the swimming pool and pool barrier, and there may not be a swimming pool, so it's just not applicable. So cross that out, tick that off, and leave it blank if it hasn't been completed or it's not acceptable. So the work might have been done, but it may not necessarily be acceptable. So and then what we're going to do is we're going to drag all of the tasks into the property manager's actions, and we'll make a note. So when we're making a note, I'll show you that in a second, you just use the @ sign and then the property manager's name, and it'll actually come up and it'll be an email sent through to them that the work has been done. So and we'll go through the section. So you've got the audit particulars, so just fill this in. So it'll be again August, and the audit number, exactly the same as we've got in the electronic version. But my suggestion here is if you're going to use the printed version, then what you would do is you would print this, check it all off. You may make some notes on this along the way, and then scan that and pop that into the physical file. The difficulty with using the paper version, now of course it's much easier to print off and read through. The difficulty with this one is you don't really have a tracking process. So if you're using the electronic version, what you can do is you can, if you've got the pro version of Trello, you can allocate the task. I'll show that in a second. If you've only got the free version, then you can just do the @ sign and then put a due date inside of here. Okay, so there's 33 different points. I'm going to jump out of that here, and as I said, it's exactly the same information that we've got in through to here. Make a selection. My recommendation is always to use the electronic version, as I said, because you can just go in and, for example, you can go @ Michael, and the property manager's name will come up. You click that, and therefore the property manager will then receive a notification that there's a task that's allocated through to them. So this is where the video is that I'm doing now. It's where the video is being stored. So we're going to put in the property address, property manager, the renters' names. So just use the surnames inside of here. And if there's multiple renters inside of there with different names, then you would use both. If it's a husband and wife, or brother and sister, or family members, children, so it might be, if there's three renters called Callum, their surname's Callum, so you'd actually put Callum, Callum, and Callum. So that it indicates that there's 3 renters inside of here. We're looking at the original bond amount and then the current rent amount. What this is trying to do here is to try and have a look and see if we can find that the original tenancy started in 2016. The original bond was $1,600. The current rent is $1,650. What that says to me is over the last 4 to 5 years, the rent increases haven't really occurred. That's the reasons why we track that information. New rent amount, and again, what I'm trying to do here is to try and really run a tracking process. If we're continually doing, and you'll be able to see this through patterns through the property manager as well. If you've got one property manager that's not as probably aggressive, doesn't do the work with regards to market assessments, what you'll find is there may be the age-old $5 increases that have snuck up quietly, $5 a week that have gone through. But if you've got somebody who is doing their job correctly, looking at market trends, really looking at the comparables, what you should find is that you've got here is it might be 1600, that might go to 1625, and then if the original bond was 1600, and that was a couple of years ago, you'll see some gradual increases along the way. Initial start date of the tenancy. Now what we've got, so that's when they are effectively moved in. And again, now we're looking at the new rental agreement date and the term as well. What we're looking for here is patterns, what you might find. And what I'm trying to do is trying to get an understanding, and that the whole process of this audit process to really look at how can I, as a department manager, look to modify behavior of the property manager, look to train and upskill the property manager, look to try and help them in areas where they're not performing, or conversely, acknowledge and reward them for the things that they're doing really well. If you've got 3 portfolios, you'll be able to then have a look at, as I said, you've got properties 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15. You can then start to look at trends. You might have one portfolio manager that is really quite reluctant in their portfolio to do rental increases, whereas somebody else in their portfolio in the same month, similar types of properties, similar types of markets, similar types of landlords, and similar types of tenancies, has gone and increased their rents by $20. Somebody else has done it by $5. This gives you a really good opportunity to be able to go through and, as I said, and really spend some time with that property manager and understand. And as a department manager, this is the role that you will play to really maximise your portfolio. Don't just take everything as being given. Rent increase was served, yes or no, on this one, and the amount, and then you'd be popping your name inside of there and the date that it was ordered. Now, what we've got here is the section for the property manager. If you're using an electronic version, let's just say, for example, this one's ticked, that one's ticked, that one's ticked, that's all fine, but that one's not. That one's ticked and that one's ticked. What I do is at the end of this section, I'm just going to drag that up to there and pop that into there. And I'm going to drag that inside of there. And instead of the property manager coming and having to look through 33 different points to find out what they have to do to fix this portfolio, this audit up, what they're doing is they're looking at the 3 or 4 or 5 points that are sitting inside of here. And what you might do is then just write and drag up one of the notes actions to complete this task. So I'm just going to undo that now so that I don't mess it up. So 1C. And you'll see as I've gone through and I've just check marked this off. So we've gone into there. It tells you where the portfolio's, where it's up to, and what percentage of the activity has been completed. So I'm going to uncheck those as I go through, but that's what we're looking to do. So let's just start off with, now the first thing we always look for is our authority as an agent to be able to perform the duties. So what I'm looking for here is inside of the cloud storage, that might be Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, SharePoint, whatever it is that you're using to create your property folder. Now, we've got other training videos on how to create the folder. So you would have your landlord information, the property information, the current tenancy and the previous tenancies, that it all be separated there. What I'm doing now is I'm going in and I'm having a look and saying, is there a new authority? Has it been prepared, sent to the RRP, the rental provider, since April of 2021? Now, specifically in Victoria, we're looking here now, since the changes to the Tenancies Act, and there really does need to be a new authority to be able to then charge some of the fees that we were possibly charging beforehand, but we now need to make sure they're incorporated into the rental agreement. and that we've got a new authority. Is it complete or is it just a couple of pages? Now, as part of your agency process, what you should be doing is making sure that if there's 11 pages in an authority, all 11 pages are sitting inside there. Don't fall for the trap of having only the signed pages. If it's an old REIV one or a paper document, don't fall for that trap. If it is an incomplete document, then you need to get a new one. Is it valid and enforceable? Always look for this. What we're trying to do is, if we're doing lease renewals on a 12-month, 18-month, 24-month basis, as we go through the audit, we're actually auditing the portfolio on an ongoing basis. So rather than wait till the end where we look at either selling the rent roll, looking at refinancing it, or maybe even consumer affairs, we're not looking at waiting and saying, is it valid and enforceable? This becomes part of our ongoing process, that the staff are aware that they need to make sure that there's always a valid and enforceable authority sitting on file. Therefore, it protects the business owners from an asset value point of view. 1C, enter the date. So the last the person who signed the authority last, just enter the date inside of there. Okay, is there a proof of ownership on file? Now, it's either a council rates or a title. Make sure that inside of your level of service, if you don't have this, you should add it into your new level of service, and that is the title search. So charge the owners to go into a title search, or give them the opportunity to give you a copy of the council rates for free. Don't fall into the trap of just taking a water rates, because they can get that anywhere, that anyone can set up a water rates. Council rates and title, they both come back to the titles office. Really, really important that you make sure that you've got, and again, it comes back to valid and enforceable. If you are not tracking council a proof of ownership, then you don't necessarily know whether the authority is made out to the correct owners, particularly in the event of a trust, a company, or a super fund. Do the owner's details, does the ownership, the proof of ownership, does it match the authority, and does it match the authority inside of the property management software? So what we're now doing is we're now overlaying the information that's on the proof of ownership to the authority to make sure that our data entry is correct. The number of times that you look at the data sitting in Property Me Tree or Console, and it just isn't accurate. Particularly around super funds, where you've got a property that's owned by a super fund. However, the property management software is still got Fred and Mary Smith, because that's who the people were you were talking to when the property was listed. It needs to be set up in the entity that the property is owned in. Is there an updated, and again, really important, updated sign, level of service and fee schedule? Sometimes they're the same document. Not all agencies have them the same. Is there a completed and valid owner's instruction form? Does it have the written bank details? Really important, and authority to sign on behalf of the rental provider. That's really important, because not all authorities have that. So sometimes the owner's instruction form needs to include authorization to sign on behalf of the rental provider. So that's signing leases, rental agreements, bonds, VCAT, breach notices, rent increases. Oh, sorry, I said rent increases. Termination notices, offer for a rental, renewal. So it's all of those sorts of things. Do you have authority, or does the owner have to sign all of those documents? So you need to make sure you've got that. Okay, do you have written bank details in the owner's instruction form, and do they match the PM software? Now what we're doing, again, on an ongoing basis, is we're going through randomly. If you've audited 15 properties, you're now doing a cross-check at the end of the month. Proof of ownership on the written bank details, sorry, not proof of ownership, owner's instruction form, written bank details, what is sitting inside of the property trust software. And again, it's just a random ongoing audit. This reduces and mitigates your exposure to internal fraud. Is there a rental disclosure statement from the rental provider on file, and has it been uploaded? And if there is there anything inside of there that needs to be noted that should be a special condition? Now that might be owner's instruction form, it might be asbestos, it might be a dispute with owners corporation, it might be embedded network, it might have been a murder homicide or something like that in the property. Is there something which has been noted on the disclosure statement that's now, if it's all no, then that's important. Probably update your tags or your labels inside of Property Me or Property Tree with your your tags and your labels. Okay, is there a minimum standards disclosure statement for the property? And if not, because part of the Act is, the new Act, particularly in Victoria, is that if we're signing a new rental agreement, so therefore that's defined as being a new agreement, and therefore the property needs to meet the minimum standards. If it does not, then that needs to be noted into the rental agreement as a special condition, what the issues are, and also when they're going to be remedied. So that's important. Has the rental provider, so the owner, have they noted anything on the disclosure statement that needs to be noted into the special conditions? Is there something in there that doesn't meet the standards? Really important. Is there owner's instruction authority? Sorry, is there owner's instruction and/or authority for smoke detector inspections in the file? And is it noted into the property management software? So are we recording this? Now, I see a lot of people in Property Tree who don't set up, or even in Property Me, they don't use reminders or labels. And what they're doing is they're simply just giving this information across to their smoke detector inspection provider and saying, well, they're looking after that. That's not adequate enough, and it sort of exposes the agency significantly as well. So this needs to be tracked inside. I often, when I'm seeing audits, I often see a smoke detector company that's either missed, or what's happened is they've sent emails through to the tenant, or they've contacted the tenant for, it could be 2 or 3 or 4 months, and they've just not been able to get access to the property, but they don't actually record, they don't inform the agency, they just make a little note on their portal. No one's checking this, so as a result, the smoke detector inspection has expired. Therefore, that exposes the agency to risk. So what should happen there is that if the tenant is not providing access to the company, then you just send through a notice of access and get the smoke detector company to come and collect the keys from the agency and go through and fix it up. Your underlying responsibility from the agency is to make sure that it's compliant, not just to send off the information to somebody else and say, well, we've given it to somebody else. You have authority to manage this. Electrical inspections, exactly the same. Gas, and again, if pull, do we have authority? Is it on file? Are we tracking it? And how can I, if I'm looking at your software, how can I track to make sure that I know, maybe from a lookup or a report, if I've got 150 properties, I should be able to really easily identify every property that we have instructions for that we're managing the smoke detector for, gas, electrical, and pools, if applicable. Every property should have those 4 tags, reminders, labels, or actions, compliance activities. They should have all 4 of them in there. Now, the options are either the agency's managing it, the rental provider's managing it, or it's missing. So they're the 3 options. So what should happen is I should be able to go to a portfolio. If I've got 150 properties, I should be able to look up, hypothetically, 125 properties that the agency's managing smoke detector inspections for. 20 that the landlord is managing, and as a result, we should still be setting up a reminder, but noting that the landlord is managing the process, but we still need to set it up as a reminder because we need to have on file a copy of the compliance inspection report, and we also need to provide that into the condition report and to the tenants at any stage within 7 days of them requesting that if we've not provided it before. Or we should also note the ones that are missing. Now, what I wouldn't be doing is I certainly wouldn't be doing a lease renewal if we don't have authorizations for these. This would be one of those, I won't say standoff, but one of these opportunities where we go back to the owner and say, we really can't be going forward with renewals if we can't comply with the minimum approach to making sure the property is compliant. Now, again, any of these that are, so what should happen at the end of this is if I've gone through and everything's accurate, every one of these should be tagged off, and the property manager would see all of this when they go through, and because at the end you're going to go and send this across to the property manager, because it might actually form part of their monthly performance management. It might form part of their KPIs. It may just be a part of the process for personal development and professional development for the PM. Okay, let's come across to the next section. So now we're looking at the what's on the Google Drive server, those sorts of things. Now what we're looking for is what's inside of the property management software. Have the attributes been set up correctly? So again, we're looking, so these really should be yes, 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 yes. But often if you've brought a brand new property across, you might have brought it across from another agency and the file hasn't been set up correctly and wasn't audited at the time of bringing it across. Or, as I indicated before, if you do this on a monthly basis, you're effectively going through and auditing, and you'll filter out all these little things along the way. So your the portfolio will be compliant at all times. Have the attributes been set up properly? Are the labels correct? And I've got some other information. I've got another list of labels. I think there's over 100 labels, particularly for Property Me, to be able to tag the documents. Documents information, where is the property up to? And again, the reasons why I use all of those labels and tags is simply so that we can then identify properties later on. So we're looking to work through by exception. So what's missing, what's wrong, what's expired, and then we're going to focus on those. If all the documents are right, then that's great. But what I'm trying to do is I need to be able to find at a report that shows what's missing. Is the landlord's insurance compliant? Is there a reminder, a tag, a task? Has that been done? Has it been set up correctly? Is it expired? That's the sort of stuff that we're looking for. Is there a current landlord's insurance policy in place? And if not, we need to be sort of tracking this, and this is a really good indicator for you, trigger point for you to be able to go back to the owner. Same with building insurance, and again, we're now looking at smoke detector compliance. Is there a reminder? So beforehand, we were looking at the authority. Now we're looking at the reminders. Has it been set up correctly? Often the reminders won't have been set up correctly. So this again becomes part of the department manager, team leader's job to go through on a monthly basis and just check to make sure that everything's been done right. You only have to do this a couple of times with your PMs for them to realise what it is that you're looking for, but it also sets the standard. And now, if you can go through and create an agency best practice level of standard, which is what we're trying to do, if you can do that through your audit process, it then starts to bring everyone up and they know what they need to be able to do for again, if this is part of their KPIs or their commission, they know what they need to be able to complete before they're going to receive their commission. Compliance standards, is there a program in place, is what we're looking for here. So electrical, gas and carbon monoxide, pool and pool spas. The next one here, number 20, was the property compliant with smoke, gas, electrical and pool if applicable? Was it, I'm just going to make that one there bold. Was it, okay, we'll make it bold. Was it compliant? Was the property compliant and safety in the rental agreement? Were we able to actually provide all four of those if applicable? Okay. Did the property meet the minimum standards? Yes or no? Is there any maintenance that's outstanding greater than 30 days? Now what we're looking for is trying to track through. You might have had a situation where there might have been a property with a fence that's been an issue for for 3 months, 4 months, trying to deal with the neighbours. So we need to figure that out. Might be a good opportunity for you to then have a chat with the PM and then just get an understanding of where it's up to. Again, tick, 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 tick. Anything that's missing, drag it up to the top. The renter card, so that's actually more the property card now, the renter card. Have the new agreement start dates and end dates been entered correctly? Often we will put them in as leases. There'll be a misunderstanding with property managers that it's 366 days. So if it was put in as the 1st of the 1st, 2021, next year it'll be put in as the 1st of the 1st, 2022. That's 366 days. So it needs to be the 31st of December, 2021. Is there a reminder task for periodic inspections? Has that been set up correctly? And has the reminder task for a rental agreement been set up for 3 months prior? That's really important. Now, the rental agreement itself, were there any special conditions in the agreement? And if so, were they set up correctly? Is there a reference to the tenancy transfer fee? Often, particularly in Victoria now, that needs to be incorporated into the lease. did the agreement include a written information on how the smoke alarms would work? Because that's really, really important. Again, that meets the residential tenancy regulations. That needs to be put in through to there. Have the owners corporation, if they are applicable, been added. Even if it's a lease renewal, the tenants have received their, they might have received the tenancy 3 years ago. Every lease renewal should have a copy of the owners corporation rules again, because that forms the basis of the entire document. Were there any specific move-in, move-out guidelines attached to the agreement? There may be, in some buildings, you have to contact a building manager to be able to get padding into the lifts. You have to lock down the lifts for a certain period of time. You can only move out on Monday to Friday. You can't move out on weekends. They're the sorts of things. You might have to move out through a loading dock. They're the sorts of things that need to be incorporated. And if they're part of the tenancy, if it's the way in which the rules are going to impact the tenancy, need to be included. Was the property compliant? And again, that needs to be with regards to gas and smoke. And if not, that needs to be noted. Were there any points missing in the minimum standards where it didn't meet the minimum standards? Again, that needs to be noted into the agreement. If there was a pet added during the tenancy period, so for the last 12 months, say for example, it was a fixed term, there was a pet incorporated into that, I've been making a note of that the pet has been brought in. So the leased conditions in the last 12 months, the dates, if there was a pet agreement clause, I'd be noting all of that. I'd also make sure that that's noted in the property management software, particularly if it's a bigger animal. You might have a large dog in the backyard. You want to make sure your property managers are fully aware of that before they just go into a routine and all of a sudden there's a really big dog either inside or outside the property that they weren't aware of. The other one is allergies. You might find that one of your property managers has an allergic reaction to some animals, might be cats, and there's a property with a cat, and if they're going to go to that property, they're going to have an adverse reaction. So these are the things that need to be noted within the tenancy on the property management software, so that the property manager is fully aware before they go there, particularly if it's not a property which they've managed for a period of time and they weren't involved in bringing the animal in. Disclosure statement, were there any points related to the rental disclosure statement that should have been disclosed, and have they been added in? With regards to future rent increases, really important that inside of the lease that you actually make a note of both the future rent increases. You also need to note the tenancy transfer fees. You also need to look at the break lease formula, and amounts need to be incorporated into all leases. But if you're going to be using a comparable method, if you're going to be using a fixed method, if you're going to be using a CPI or a market adjusted method, you should be noting that in the rental agreement. And is there a completed copy of the agreement uploaded? So has it been executed and uploaded, and is it inside of the portal? Rent review. Was there a rent review and rent increase completed at the same time? If yes, then to be tick yes. If it's not, you really want to start to query this. My job as a department manager would be now to go back through and say, well, hang on, Mr. Property Manager, Mrs. Property Manager, we've got the tenants have been in there for 4 years. We've had one rent increase over a 4-year period. What information are you providing back through to the owner to make sure that they're keeping up to market? And this is a question that this is a way for me, I can then start to really track and manage those behaviours. If there was a completed rent agreement, rent increase, is there a copy of it? Has it been signed? Has it been all documented correctly? Is there evidence to justify the increase? So comparables, properties that were sent through registered post if it was going to be done by physical copy. Is there evidence that the rental provider and renter have agreed and received a copy of the executed agreement? So really important that if it's an electronic software like a Inspection Express and you're using your agreements through there, really easy. If you're using the REIV documents, really easy. If you're using a paper-based or another form which doesn't have electronic signatures, then they may not necessarily be getting the copy. Most, like a DocuSign, they'll have that now, and you can track to it. Just as basically that would be a yes. But if you're not making sure that the owner and also the tenant has a copy of these, then that's really important. They should also both be accessible through the landlord and tenant portals on your software as well. Is there a copy of it saved in the property folder and also in the PM software again? And again, here I'd be making this accessible to be downloaded. Is there a reminder task for a rent review 3 months prior to the 12-month anniversary? Now, again, I say 12 months, but this would be 12 months from the last rent increase. So you don't just do it 12 months from the lease, but it needs to be 12 months from the last increase. Has the releasing fee been charged and set up correctly in accordance with the management authority or the agent's fee schedule? The owner's fee schedule. So that's all of what we'd be looking for in an audit. And as I said, I'd be copying this multiple times. Don't use the template. Don't mark off on the template. Use the template, copy it over, add the properties names, add the property managers' names. And then what I would be doing is coming up to here. I'll just jump out of that one, come up to here, and I would be going at Michael, and then I'd make my notes, because if I've got that here, Michael's ad, Michael's now receiving the information inside of here. I'd be saying, great job, did really well, missing the authority, delete that. Missing the authority, missing the owner's corporation forms, need to get this done, and query the rental comparables, those sorts of things. And then the property manager would look at that and then either fix up the last 2 or 3 tasks. And then once that's done, it's complete. It's been audited correctly. So you've really got an ongoing approach to agency best practice and audits for your property. So this is the way we would go through and audit a new lease agreement or rental agreement extension. And if it was a paper copy, then we would just tick all of those boxes, make our notes, scan it, and attach it inside of here. Also, hope that helps with your audit process. Thanks for that.